This footage of a girl sobbing to death and no one even coming to her aid has been trending, and people cannot stop talking about how no one came to her aid. This young woman Iryna boarded the Lynx Blue Line train in Charlotte, North Carolina. She had just finished her shift and wanted to get home. She sat down, unaware that behind her was a man who will kill her in exactly 4 minutes. Security cameras captured everything. The entire brutal attack that would shock America, spark national political debate, and expose the failures of a broken system. The victim was 23-year-old Iryna Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee who had fled war only to be murdered on American public transport by a complete stranger with a history of violence that authorities had ignored for years. Iryna Zarutska was living the American dream that millions of refugees can only hope for. After fleeing the war in Ukraine, the 23-year-old had found safety in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was known in her neighborhood for walking dogs with her radiant smile, always greeting neighbors warmly. She dreamed of pursuing a career as a veterinary assistant. Iryna had built a quiet, peaceful life in South End Charlotte. She worked hard, kept to herself, and was slowly rebuilding after the trauma of leaving everything behind in Ukraine. Friends and neighbors described her as kind, gentle, and optimistic about her future in America. On the evening of August 22, 2024, Iryna was doing what thousands of people do every day, taking public transport home after work. The Lynx Blue Line was her usual route, a light rail system that Charlotte promoted as safe and reliable. At 9:46 p.m., surveillance cameras show Iryna boarding the train at the South End station. She finds a seat and settles in for what should have been a routine 15-minute ride home. But sitting just behind her was Decarlos Brown, a 25-year-old man with a violent criminal history that stretched back years. Brown had convictions for armed robbery, felony larceny, and breaking and entering. He had spent more than 5 years behind bars for robbery with a dangerous weapon. At 9:50 p.m., just 4 minutes after Iryna boarded, Brown attacked. The video shows him suddenly lunging forward and brutally stabbing the young woman multiple times. Iryna never saw it coming. She had no chance to defend herself, no opportunity to run. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong or a dispute that escalated. This was a random, unprovoked attack by a stranger who decided to kill someone for no reason at all. Other passengers watched in horror as Brown continued his assault. The attack was swift, vicious, and deadly. Within seconds, Iryna Zarutska was dying on the floor of a public train, another victim of senseless violence. After stabbing Iryna, Decarlos Brown didn't try to run or hide what he had done. The video shows Brown walking through the rail car, taking off his sweatshirt and waiting by the doors as passengers look on. His behavior was chilling in its casualness. He had just committed murder and seemed completely unbothered by it. When police arrived at the scene, Brown was still on the train. He didn't resist arrest or try to claim self-defense. He was taken into custody without incident, as if killing a stranger was just another ordinary Tuesday night for him. But as investigators dug into Brown's background, they discovered this attack wasn't as random as it first appeared. It was the inevitable result of a system that had failed catastrophically. This wasn't Brown's first violent crime. He had terrorized Charlotte for years, cycling in and out of the justice system without ever receiving the long-term incarceration or mental health treatment he clearly needed. Court records show a pattern of escalating violence. Multiple armed robberies where he threatened victims with weapons. Breaking and entering charges where he invaded people's homes. Felony larceny that showed a complete disregard for others' property. A robbery with a dangerous weapon that should have kept him locked up for decades. Yet somehow, Brown was free to board that train on August 22nd, free to sit behind an innocent young woman. Free to decide that her life meant nothing. The most disturbing detail emerged from jailhouse phone calls after his arrest. Brown claims government mind control materials made him stab the 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee in recorded jailhouse phone call. He blamed brain implants and government mind control for his actions, showing a complete disconnect from reality and responsibility. This wasn't mental illness, this was a violent predator making excuses for his choice to kill an innocent person. The murder of Iryna Zarutska exposed the ugly truth about crime and public safety in American cities. This wasn't a crime of passion or a robbery gone wrong. This was the predictable result of a broken system that prioritizes the rights of violent criminals over the safety of innocent people. White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt called the fatal stabbing of Ukrainian refugee Iryna Zarutska in Charlotte a preventable tragedy. The federal government's assessment was blunt. This murder should never have happened. Decarlos Brown should have been in prison on August 22nd. His history of armed robbery and violent crime warranted a lengthy sentence that would have kept him off the streets. Instead, he was free to hunt for victims on public transportation. The surveillance video that captured Iryna's murder quickly went viral on social media, sparking national outrage and political debate. The case has turned into a flashpoint as the Trump administration vows to crack down on crime in large, predominantly Democratic cities. President Donald Trump is using the killing of Iryna Zarutska to highlight the need for his crime agenda. The case became a symbol of everything wrong with America's approach to violent crime: too much sympathy for criminals, not enough protection for victims. But political debates couldn't bring Iryna back or comfort her family still grieving in war-torn Ukraine. The Charlotte Area Transit System, CATSA, was forced to confront the reality that their light rail system wasn't safe. CATS announced new safety operations including bike units and urban terrain patrols, measures that came too late for Iryna. Charlotte's mayor faced intense criticism for comments that seemed to downplay the severity of the attack. Citizens demanded to know how the city had allowed such a dangerous individual to remain free on their streets. The case also highlighted the vulnerability of refugees and immigrants who come to America seeking safety, only to become victims of the very violence they fled. The Justice Department charged Decarlos Brown with a federal crime that could carry the death penalty. Federal prosecutors took over the case, recognizing that this wasn't just a local crime, it was an attack on the safety of America's public transportation system. Brown was charged with murder in the first degree in North Carolina State Court and committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system in federal court. He now faces the possibility of execution for his crimes. Brown's legal team will likely argue mental illness, pointing to his bizarre claims about government mind control. But prosecutors have made it clear they view this as a calculated act of violence by a career criminal who chose to kill an innocent person. The case moves forward as Iryna's family in Ukraine struggles to understand how their daughter could survive a war zone only to be murdered by a stranger on American public transportation. Iryna Zarutska came to America seeking safety and opportunity. She found work, made friends, and was building a new life in Charlotte. She represented the best of the American dream, someone willing to work hard and contribute to her community. But America failed her. The system that should have kept Decarlos Brown in prison instead put him on a train with an innocent young woman. The result was a senseless murder that has left a family shattered and a community questioning whether anyone is truly safe.